It's 7:07. I'm Daedalus Howell, and this is Jack Tibbetts. He's running for Santa Rosa City Council, but you may know him right now as a board member of the Public Utility Commission. Is that correct?
Close. Board of Public Utilities for the city of Santa Rosa.
Gotta keep the public.
Yeah.
It's always about the public, man.
It is always about
What's
the
with all
public.
the people's community? Jack, I went on your website for your campaign, which is extraordinary. The amount of endorsements you have from people I know, as we talked a little bit about before, people I don't know, but the quality and caliber of the community members that are focused there is pretty exhilarating. And I wonder, how did you garner all of that? How did you curry that favor?
Curry that favor.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think there's any favors involved. I think that a lot of people like seeing me as a candidate because I'm not only young, I'm 26 years old, but I also have a lot of experience in the field of public policy and a lot of credibility when it comes to getting things done. I graduated from UC Berkeley in 2014 and I came home to Santa Rosa. I was born and raised here, so this is where I naturally wanted to come back to and get involved. And I was involved in a number of projects here in the community where I had the opportunity to work with just about everybody on that list, you know, and it was all quality, positive experiences working with them. So when I decided to run, I think it was a natural fit for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, and you make it very easy. There's a form they can fill out,
Yes,
which I think is really quite smart. Why did you come back? It's like you made it out, right? You went to a great school, and you have all of this accomplishment behind you, and all of this positivity you can bring forth into the world. What was the attraction that compelled you to come back?
To be honest with you, the attraction for me to come back, because I've lived a number of other places. I've lived in Park City, Utah. I've lived in Truckee. I've lived in Santa Barbara, and those places are hard to beat as far as quality of life. It's a really.
I would take Truckee off the list, but yeah, Santa Barbara. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Truckee. But Santa Rosa for me, it's just home. Why are you called home? You just are. And knowing that I wanted to get involved with a community and with public policy and help make positive change in people's lives and use politics as that vehicle for it, I saw a lot of ways in which Santa Rosa could be improved. I saw that Santa Rosa is the town where I can play a role in making big positive changes. So that was part of my thinking as to why, you know, Santa Rosa's home. Let's go see if I can give back to the community that gave so much to me growing up. It's
a great base. It's a great place to begin a political career. Is this what we're looking at down the line?
I get that question a lot.
Yeah, you're young enough where that's actually a potentiality.
And yeah, and I think when they see young people too, they assume this person's starting off and he's looking at city council, so a natural progression would be is to move up the ladder. The truth is I really don't know.
Yeah.
If you had asked me in college when I was just starting to look at politics as a way to make positive impact in the world, I would have said yes. I would have said I want to be anything I can in government and be the one who's able to make the decisions at the end of the day as to which way the vote's going to go.
Well, it's important to me that you go into politics, not least of which because I want to vote for you.
Well, thank
you.
you.
Can I say that legally? No. But because I want to have this clip we're doing be worth a damn 20 years from now, right? I'm making an investment in my future through you.
Fair enough. Well, thanks for investing in mine today by giving me the opportunity to be here. But I want to answer that question fully. After starting out and now having run a campaign and being considered to be a legitimate candidate for this race, there's such an underbelly to politics, even local politics. You know, when we're making decisions about turning the street lights back on, making sure that your water is delivered and your water is processed, you know, things that should be just fundamental and nonpartisan, partisanship finds its way into it. And so this is going to be, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, and believe me, I do want to be elected, I'm working hard to be elected. If I am, this next 4 years will really be a look at, is this the path that I'm going to take in life, or are there other ways to make a positive impact? People make positive impacts every day as, you know, private entrepreneurs, as executives, or people who work in a nonprofit space. You know, there's so many ways to do it.
So it starts with the ethos, and that's expressed through any of a number of career paths.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the underbelly you mentioned, I find this fascinating because I too detect it, and I'm up against it sometimes. And as a journalist, I see a bit of it. And I'm not asking you to go into specifics, but is this something you want to shine a light on?
I don't think you necessarily have to shine a light on it. I think that you just have to try to tear it down, and the best way to tear it down is through effective communication with everybody.
Right.
Once you get into politics, I think it becomes too easy to look at, okay, this group predominantly donated to my campaign. This group is my bread and butter. This is the group that I need to make happy during this term so I can get another term.
Right.
But you can't do that. You can't go down that road. You have to communicate with these people as much as these people, and you need to tell them the same thing. And I think that when you do that, when people can establish that, all right, this person may not vote with me on every issue. I mean, not many politicians do anymore. This person is an independent thinker. Once they establish that, but they establish that you are trustworthy, they respect you. And I think that's how you have to make those changes.
It also seems that engendering trust and creating a forum for the obvious empathy you have for the causes that you support is kind of a brandable notion in some ways. And I don't mean that with any disrespect. I think we have to brand ourselves to some degree. And I think your web presence and your logo are a testimony to a certain savvy and awareness of how people need to hang on something to understand it, or at least it's a doorway to get into understanding what you're doing. Do you feel that there's a Jack Tibbetts brand? And if that's the case, is trust one of the big parts of it?
I don't know if there's a brand or not. I don't think that there is. The branding, my consultant is in charge of the branding.
They're doing a great job, man.
He is doing a great job.
I'd wear the shirt.
I would not have been able to create that website or create that image that you're talking about. For me, it's not about image. It's not even about being known or notoriety. In fact, I think that's one of the negative side effects of being in politics. If I could just go in a closet and make decisions, I would do that.
Yeah.
And never be known for it.
I mean, you're obviously savvy enough, and you've come up in an era where, understanding how image is used is part of the part of what's incumbent upon you to do. I mean, you have to. You're presenting an aspect of yourself that you hope people respond to, so that you can enact the change on their behalf that you wish to. Right?
That's true.
So,
if I could have a brand, it would be trust.
Yeah.
It would be trust, and people knowing that they have a council member who will be their advocate and will always make decisions based on a strong moral compass.
Yeah, I can see that. And let me ask you, you're going to come up against this a lot, I'm sure, with the press. Your age, do you feel it's a liability or an asset?
So far, it's been an asset. Actually, I thought it was going to be a liability. My consultants for a long, long time tried to hide it. They tried
to.
Yeah, we threw out pictures where I looked too young, and we tried to pick the pictures for the website where I looked older.
That's interesting.
But going door to door, I found that the first thing almost everyone says at the door is, "How old are you? You're young." I've even had some people say, "Are you old enough to vote?" And I have to tell them, "Well, I'm much younger than I look." But they like it. They like to see that there are young people out there who want to make a positive impact, who want to get civically engaged. I think it actually gives them hope for the future, and I hope that more young people step up and start looking into different avenues of public service, whether it's through appointments or through being an elected official.
Let's pick up on that in the next segment. We're talking with Jack Tibbetts. He's running for City Council here in Santa Rosa. This is 7 to 7. We're back on 7 to 7 with Jack Tibbetts. He's running for City Council here in Santa Rosa. We left off talking about the engagement of the younger generation in politics at every level. You would be a millennial? Is that okay? I'm Gen X.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Your parents were baby boomers.
They were.
Okay. Where do I fit in this equation? How is Gen X relevant? There's only 6 of us in Santa Rosa, but we vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, I think everybody's relevant, right? Even though I'm a young man running for public office, I'm not just running to represent millennials. I'm running to represent everybody, and so that would be my short answer to that question, is that everybody has a place, everybody fits into this community, and everybody who runs has to represent everyone.
Now, there is a constituency that I know you have an interest in that I think is underrepresented, and that's the homeless. Right now, you have a charity called Warm for the Holidays.
That's correct.
Right, where you distribute, I believe, blankets and that kind of material to aid on cold nights. But we have essentially, I wouldn't say a housing crisis, but definitely due to income disparities and rising rents and that kind of thing, a housing issue, right? That's disenfranchised a lot of people, and a lot of places where homeless have congregated in the past have been removed due to development or the SMART train or whatever. How do we tackle that? How do you represent them?
Well, I think we tackle that by making investments and giving them homes. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the Housing First model and that whole concept of Instead of having somebody who's homeless go through a shelter, a treatment program, et cetera, and then arriving in the house, you give them that stability and security first by way of giving them a home. And then you take case management services and you provide that wraparound service to that person. I believe that has to be the way forward. I think if we were to actually make some significant public investments in a program like that here in Santa Rosa, we'd see really great results. And I think it would be great for the person in question. It would also be great for the community. And the person who's walking downtown right now going, there's a really high presence of homeless people down here. I think it would be a win-win-win. And we talk about investments. It costs about $13,500 to house, just provide shelter for one homeless person in Sonoma County. That doesn't take into account criminal justice fees. That doesn't take into account the emergency room visits and medical fees. So by just
ancillary costs that we absorb by dint of the fact they don't have a home.
Absolutely, okay. But you provide them with that home. Study after study after study shows that those ancillary costs go away.
I know you're an advocate for tiny homes, which I find fascinating, and I've written about this in the past and all that. Where would you put the tiny homes? And how do you get away with, or get around rather, the NIMBY factor? It's great to have tiny homes for homeless people, but I don't want them in my neighborhood, right. Somebody might say.
Well, I think that the tiny homes are actually a good way to try to circumvent the NIMBYism. I've talked to many people who would like to see kind of these cottage courts or
These are small houses, by the way, about 100 square feet, individual units that are autonomous housing.
So I think this is actually a potential solution to some NIMBYism. It really still remains to be seen. Why I got invested or personally interested in tiny homes is because they're incredibly cost efficient to build. The labor material costs are significantly less than a traditional single family home or even a multi-unit development. But in order for you to be cheaper than a high density multi-unit development, you have to be putting these tiny homes on properties where the utilities are stubbed in place. It's right. Development readiness, and that's the issue. So the County of Sonoma and the City of Santa Rosa are both property owners. They both have vacant parcels of land with utilities stubbed in place, and we need to start talking about utilizing those, because right now they're just fallen by the wayside, and we have a lot of people with a lot of need. Let's get those people in tiny homes or something similar. It could be even modular homes, although I think the NIMBY factor increases with something like that, but start using that land.
Yeah, and when you bring this up with council, say you're on council and you're dealing with the other personalities there, how do you get an initiative like this, or any initiative, to come across and reach them and create a consensus? Because there's so many different and diverse personalities on our council even now, and it was even crazier a couple years ago. How are you going to do that?
Well, what I think you have to do is everybody has a solution in their own mind, or at least almost I know every council member has a solution in their own mind. And just about every council member, if you took their solution or a piece of it, I think is a part of a broad strategy that will work.
Yeah.
So I think in order to achieve that consensus, in order to get there, you really have to give people buy-in by commingling solutions, if you will, bringing everybody in to be a part of the process. I won't use this person's name, but I was working with a group that's working with a councilman right now, and he's done incredible work on homelessness, and he's really bringing ways to track data, which is key in kind of curing this problem, is knowing where's this person been, where are they going, what's their medical history, et cetera, so we know how to treat them appropriately. Well, he's done a great job of bringing organization to serving our homeless population. But I've been working with a group of advocates that's trying to pass a city ordinance to allow faith-based organizations to use their land for some of these tiny home developments, because there's a lot of faith groups out there that want to help be a part of lifting people up, solving the homelessness issue, and they have land and resources. So let's empower them and give them a venue with which to do that through an ordinance. Well, this council member was a little bit skeptical about it because he wants to be able to track and organize, and this can be maybe more anarchic, if you will.
Right.
But I just presented it to him and other advocates. Well, look, this can be the launch pads with which we can bring people together. We can kind of bring them into one cohort, and then services can be provided there. It can be a launch pad, if you will. Get people in and then get them on this multi-step process all the way back to functionality.
Let's talk about how you grew up in town. What was that like? What was your childhood? We're talking 90s probably?
90s?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was born in 1990. Growing up here for me was, it was special, but also very unoriginal. I grew up, I went to St. Eugene's Cathedral School, And then my parents they divorced when I was very, very young. My dad lived in West County, my mom here in town. I attended St. Eugene's, Montgomery High School, played football for the Santa Rosa Stallions, basketball for the Spartans, soccer.
How did you pick for basketball but not football? Yeah.
Well, I was much smaller in high school. I was 4'11" and 99 pounds in high school, and I have blue hair. So that's kind of my upbringing.
Because you're like 100 feet tall, like in real life, yeah.
Now. It took me a long time to grow, and so it was nice. And actually, growing up a little bit in the country and in the city gave me a lot of respect for the environment as well. I think about the city today and all the people that are now moving here, people who are being displaced from the Bay Area because it's so expensive to live there.
Do you have siblings in town? Or are they still?
I don't. I'm lonely only.
Really?
Yes, I am.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So as people are kind of moving and looking to Sonoma County and we're growing, I see Santa Rosa as a place where we should absorb some of that growth. We should organize and define that growth, because if we don't, I think it's negatively going to define us, and we're going to start seeing spillover into the rest of Sonoma County.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how you grew up. Like, what was like the temperature culturally like for you back then?
Can you be more specific?
Like, you had blue hair, right? Were you a punk? Were you hanging out? Where? I mean, what was that all about?
Yeah.
By punk, I mean capital P, cool.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was probably lowercase uncool. I switched at the last minute. I wanted to switch over from going to St. Eugene's to Montgomery, and arriving as a freshman was difficult for me. I was an outcast. I was considered probably a loner. I had friends, but none of them were strong, and so there were times that were tough in high school. And it was actually, I was telling someone the other day, a good experience, because if you want to go forth in the world, it's good that you're bullied at some point, because it kind of really teaches you empathy, and that's one of these values that as a public official would, right up there with trust and empathy. Being able to feel and walk in somebody else's shoes. And
then going to Cal, what did you study?
I studied political science with an emphasis on American government and public policy. And
so this seed had been definitely planted.
It had, but not in high school. I couldn't have named the 3 branches of government to you in high school. It wasn't until I arrived. I got very politically active around the tuition issue at actually the city college level. I started off in city college, and Governor Brown just did his trigger cuts, and when he had my tuition over doubled, and I was watching a lot of my peers go through the same thing, and I thought, you know what, this stinks. Let's organize around this. Let's put forward a solution, and maybe there is one. And we did. We wrote a ballot measure to tax oil companies, and it ended up getting endorsed by Robert Reich, a Nobel climatologist named Dr. Daniel Kamen, and then it became state legislation, Senate Bill 1017, which was carried by Noreen Evans. And it was an incredible experience. That is part of where I got the political bug and making change.
That's great. We're talking with Jack Tibbetts. He's running for local city council here in Santa Rosa. We'll be right back. And we're back on 707. We're talking to Jack Tibbetts. He's running for city council here locally and rolling with the idiotic punches I keep throwing. Not really at you, but around, right? But one of the ones I keep landing on, if I'm landing any, is my interest in affordable housing, not just in Santa Rosa, but countywide. And some of the solutions we've already talked about, tiny houses among them, I think are really interesting. But is that enough? And when I talk to people on the streets, and I've had occasion to do this for the city, who I should say underwrites this show, right? When producing a documentary on the homeless for them recently, this idea of tracking or keeping track of people and their particular individual needs as they go through the system, I think many would bristle with because they just want to be left alone, or they don't want to have to abide by rules. And I'm not saying that homelessness is a lifestyle choice, but there's a certain kind of freedom that some of the people I've spoken to have come to appreciate having.
Sure.
Right, and being in a program sort of sidestep some of what they would perceive as their individual freedoms. How do you integrate those feelings into these kind of programs?
So for the folks that it may be a lifestyle choice, or they enjoy the freedom, as you put it, of not having a mortgage, not having a phone bill, things like that.
Well, I mean more like a good example is this dude who takes LSD every day. I mean, it's obviously led to some issues in how he conducts himself in his work life, right? But he doesn't want to be told not to do drugs. And so some of the programs that would be available to him request and require that he not do drugs. So how do you speak to somebody like that?
Right.
Especially when they're on acid.
Well, yeah, somebody like that, that's a tougher one because so many people want to create what are called these high barrier models to homelessness, where if you're going to participate in this program or use our shelter or come live in our community, you have to be drug-free, alcohol-free, and something other free. And in a way, it's understandable because you got to give to get. But at the same time, I mean, when I go home at the end of the day, I like to have a beer, you know. But I couldn't do that in a shelter, even if I'm having that drink and I'm not necessarily an alcoholic.
Right, which you are not, for the record.
And I'm not, for the record. And a threat to myself or others.
Right.
So, you know, I think that this city, I think that the city does need to be more supportive of some of these low barrier models for homelessness, because everybody deserves a safe, stable, and secure place to go to sleep at night, to keep their belongings. That's such a huge one, right? I mean, could you imagine taking around all of your possessions in life everywhere with you of every day, and how encumbering that would be? I mean, how do you go get a job, or how do you do what you want to do?
So the trick is, like, how do you create this balance where it's not patronizing, really?
That is it.
You know,
there are so many people who do feel like they're patronized, or that they're just kind of pushed around, directed, and told where to go, like a cattle call. And then there's programs where people do feel empowered. I think it comes down to the individual and how they see their situation relative to the people who are providing a service. But I think it's important to just have that diversity of programs provided. And people, and the hope would be is that somebody who is struggling with homelessness, or not, maybe they are, like you said, it's a lifestyle choice, they still can get the things that they need to feel like human beings. Fresh socks, coats, warm for the holidays, a sleeping bag so they're not going to die from exposure in the winter. Just make sure that we have those services available and people know how to reach them.
Some of the people I spoke to, besides the homeless, were those who feel there's an impact that the homeless bring to their businesses, for example, right? One lady I spoke to was concerned that somebody was sleeping in her doorway, and then was very upset when she was asked to leave that doorway because there was a sense of ownership for that doorway, right? She believed that was her house, and in all intents and purposes it was, right?
Right.
How do you work with the local merchants in this case, with this higher visibility of homelessness?
Yeah. I think there needs to be a really concerted effort, partnership between the city, the business owners, along with a lot of the key homeless advocates who have been or are homeless themselves, and to really identify a space where people can go. We've looked at Dignity Village, for example, in Oregon, what people call sanctioned encampments. Right. And I don't like that term, but the model is, it works, it's consistent. Find a place where people can go and let their self-determination thrive. I think that would go a long ways to really satisfying the interests of both the merchants as well as the people who are homeless.
And what about the library? The library is basically where homeless people check their email these days, right? How do we deal with that kind of factor, where services that would otherwise be populated by kids and students, other citizens, right, feel a little like intimidated often, I think, by the prospect of dealing with somebody who hasn't had a shower in a month.
Oh, sure, and people do feel that way. A lot of people have asked me, because I am very involved with the library, it's tough for me to go there, Jack, because there's a lot of people there that are hard to be around, who are either belligerent, under the influence, and I understand that, I do. Again, I think we need to be better about providing areas where everybody deserves access to email. I mean, that's something that we all should have access to, regardless of our income or social status.
Right.
So
I was clearly being glib,
of
right?
Course, of course.
But the fact remains, yes, that is a right, I think, to have access to that kind of stuff.
So give them a place to have access to it, where maybe it's theirs, where they can have ownership of it, where they can take care of it. I think that's a big thing, actually. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
My campaign, when we just started, we went into the Palms Inn. We wanted to do some positive projects for our community as a way to engage with voters and just engage with the community, even the people who aren't voting but are affected by the votes that I would theoretically take on the council.
Right.
So one of the things we did is we put a garden in at the Palms Inn, and we did everything up until the point of putting the soil in the boxes, in the planter boxes. And it's actually quite a funny story, because we put in all this effort. 60 volunteers spent 8 hours building this thing. It was a big project. But we took it from A to Y. We didn't get to Z.
Yeah.
And for weeks, Akash, the owner, and I were saying, okay, well, what day can you go to get soil from Grab and Grow, and we'll switch off, we'll grab our trucks, we'll get it. we really didn't follow through. But what was beautiful was that all the residents of the Palms Inn, all of a sudden 3 weeks later, I called Akash and said, Akash, we've got to get in there and get that soil. We've really dropped the ball on this. And he said, dude, all the residents actually got their own soil. They've already planted it. They've built trellises, and now it's the most vibrant garden you'd ever see. I mean, I've never seen such pride and ownership in it. And that's it. You know, it's kind of like you said, the patronizing. People don't want to be said, here's an iPad, you can use it from these hours every day. Right. You know, just give them the iPad.
Yeah. You heard it here first. Give them the iPad. It's like, I feel quite the same way. I think give people the tools. They either use them or they don't. Mm-hmm. But don't take and give and take and,
right.
and you know, yeah. We're talking about Jack Tibbetts here on 707. He's running for City Council, and I really appreciate you coming. I hope you come back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anytime. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, it was awesome.